My friends, good day. The war seems to be resuming in the Persian Gulf. I want to discuss this with you and also address the deception about the war in Europe, as I believe there's double dealing going on. On the surface, at least, what do we have? A war that was started about 2 months ago by the United States and Israel, who struck Iran during negotiations. After that, well, we know what has happened since then. There has been a relative calm for the past few weeks, for about 2 weeks, and what's happening now is that Iran has taken the initiative again by launching missiles and drones. We don't really know what the trigger was, but basically, between us, we shouldn't look for too much logic in these stories because there are three theocracies involved. We have the United States. You look at Trump, literally the Messiah. He thinks he's the Messiah. He's surrounded by radical preachers, by people who run mega churches or people like that. They come in scenes of jubilation, hysteria, falling to the ground, and all that. Really very questionable people who are now acting as spiritual advisors within the White House. We have another theocracy, which is Israel, and the third theocracy is Iran. I'll go quickly over these last two. I don't need to make the case for each one. Now, I'm telling you that here, one thinks he's the Messiah, another is waiting for the Mashiach, another wants martyrdom, and so on. So you should expect just about anything. And here we're really dealing with nonsense. In any case, today's strikes seem to have some kind of logic. There is a port, the port that allows the Emirates to export oil by bypassing the Strait of Hormuz blockade because it's located beyond the Strait of Hormuz. Donc, the three stay behind. Well, that port was hit because it allowed for some volume to still reach international markets without being subject to the blockade. In any case, today this equation is no longer valid because the port, it seems, and again, why am I being very careful with my words? Because there are a lot of computer-generated images, AI images circulating, or images from other conflicts and so on. You have to be very careful. It's a bit all over the place. Now, I'm going to say what will probably happen in the next few days. So Trump has promised to strike Iran, so we'll probably see some strikes. We'll also see some retaliation and so on. We know how it goes. On the energy front, it's going to hit really hard again. It's going to cause even higher prices for energy commodities, but also on everything that depends on them. That means pretty much everything. And I'm not necessarily thinking about the price at the pump. Of course, the price at the pump is probably the most obvious, it's the most painful, but honestly, I think there's worse behind it. Why? Because, for example, today, the price of nitrogen fertilizers has skyrocketed. So what might happen is that we'll have supply problems with food. So shocks to the food production and supply chain. So farmers who won't be able to produce as much as before or who will produce at excessive prices. And we'll see that food prices could skyrocket compared with oil or gasoline at the pump. So that won't be the worst part, the latter. So what I'm trying to say is that regarding the deception, I mentioned deception at the beginning. Europe is likely to be hit the hardest. And why? It's not because of the Strait of Hormuz, it's because of a broader architecture. Europe has been destroying its energy resilience for several decades. For example, today, while I'm talking to you, they are dismantling the Fessenheim power plant. Okay? Given that we're already in a delicate geostrategic situation, there is probably an energy shock coming. Normally, we should have engineers and technicians working day and night to restart this power plant, but no, we're dismantling it. So the Strait of Hormuz, which is a problem in Iran, is at war. These things happen. Why? If you look at history, energy has often been disrupted by political problems, by strikes, by earthquakes, by wars, blockades, international tensions, and so on. That's part of the equation. That's why all serious countries, what they do is make sure they have reserves, but also local production capacity, like nuclear power plants, and also multiple sources of energy. So what do we see? We see that European countries, if you look, I'll just name a few: Germany, France, Belgium, the United Kingdom. What have they done? They did everything to destroy their energy resilience. It was done on purpose to create a vulnerability to the slightest problem, which will be used as a catalyst. I'm not saying they started or studied this crisis or this war in the Persian Gulf for that reason, but they expected that something would eventually put the final nail in the coffin. Remember, there was the story of sanctions against Russia, which are technically sanctions against Europe itself. So Europe deprived itself of Russian oil, which it ultimately buys at a very high price through India and other countries. Then we had the destruction of nuclear power plants. Germany literally demolished its own. They blew them up to make sure that if we ever want to turn back because of a crisis or something else, they knew a crisis was coming and that we have to turn back. That we couldn't because it's always possible to restart a nuclear power plant that has been shut down, but it's much harder to build one from scratch because just with the paperwork, the permits, all that, it takes you 20 years. So what's really happening is that they actually work to destroy it. The United Kingdom poured concrete into gas wells. They taxed at 110% the profits of companies working at sea, those that were still surviving in the North Sea operations. So many of them closed, went bankrupt, packed up, and all that. Many decided to divest from energy in the United Kingdom because it's a country that sent the signal. We're good, we don't need energy anymore. So actually, if you want, Europe is constantly working to destroy its energy supply or its energy sources. So if you look, for example, I told you about farms. There you go. We talked about farms, farmers, all that. I mentioned it earlier in the video. But if you look at it in practice, we've wanted to destroy farms for a very long time. It's been a very long time. Remember 4 years ago, 5 years ago, long before the Hormuz incident, which happened just a few weeks ago, remember? For example, in the Netherlands, where farmers were blocking roads, highways, all that, protesting because they wanted to expropriate them. They wanted to expropriate them and leave the fields unused. By the way, many have lost that battle, and the fields have been left fallow. Later, they will be sold for next to nothing to large American capitalist groups. The United Kingdom did the same. Recently, Ireland did the same. Remember, the Irish stood up, the farmers were out there and all that, but then it fizzled out. Quite simply, there aren't enough people who will follow. So really, Europe has been working hard for decades to say we don't need energy. Why? Because, as I've told you several times, there's the eco scam ideology, which for some is an ideology, but for others it's a real business. They make a lot of money from it. And by destroying the European economy, quite paradoxically, some people can get rich because you can buy things for, I don't know, next to nothing. You can tax people to death, take state budgets, take public funds, and use them for snake oil, for wind turbines, for solar panels, for solar roads, for thermal insulation that doesn't work, for scams. There are plenty of people today who specialize in capturing these funds. So when Europe is collapsing in terms of energy, the collapse isn't for everyone. Many people have become specialists in this, creating companies that repeatedly collect money and then shut down, going bankrupt on purpose by design. When they open, they're programmed to go bankrupt. And then you'll find them again with a different tie, a different brochure, having set up shop 3 kilometers away and so on, and the money is usually sent abroad. So what's happening is the systematic destruction of Europe. Now, to wrap up this video, here's what I can tell you. You know, this decade started off very badly. And when you look, for example, when there was COVID, they said we would have millions of deaths. At the time, we saw Chinese people falling to the ground, convulsing and all that, and they said we would have millions and millions of deaths. Well, in the end, it's 2026, and we didn't have the millions of deaths that were promised. After that, in 2022, we had the war between Russia and Ukraine. And then they said it would end with an atomic bomb and an atomic war, you know, nuclear winter, and that's it. Well, it's 4 years later now. The red lines that were set by Moscow and all that have all been crossed many times. There has been neither nuclear war nor anything like that, and most likely it will never happen. So today, there's the story about the Strait of Hormuz, and we're being told, once again, it's going to become a nuclear war, it's going to cause famine, it's going to make the price of oil explode to $200 a barrel. Well, I want to tell you today, how do you say it in English, you know? We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. That means when we get to that bridge, we'll cross it, all right? So, you mentioned an atomic bomb. But I say we'll deal with it when we actually see the mushroom cloud in front of us. You tell me gas at €5 per litre. Okay, it's not a big deal. When I see 4.99 on the pump, we'll think about what to do that day, all right? In the meantime, what we're going to do is turn off the light and sleep. That's it. There's nothing else we can do, honestly. I almost want to tell you that it's all over. It means that we've really been fighting for years, trying to avoid all this, but we're trapped with madmen, we're trapped with enemies from within who run the European countries and who have decided that the European countries, well, it's over, they won't see the end of this century. Well, what do you want me to say? It's a choice. That's how they did it. There's no other way. People voted for them too, so there's still a bit of a democratic side to it. There are plenty of people who think that the green scam is a good thing. There are plenty of people who think we're not doing it. It's about the climate. Europe is warming twice as fast as the rest of the planet, their standard of living, and similar issues. Their standard of living and way of life threaten the planet. So there you go. We can't blame politicians for doing what needs to be done to block these dangers. The danger is energy. The danger is jobs in Europe. The danger is food. It's transportation. It's movement. It's actually all human activity. That's it. I just wanted to tell you that. So there you go, my friends. Honestly, I'm not too stressed about this war. Not at all. I didn't go to the southern hemisphere to be stressed. So I'm pretty distant when it comes to these things. I analyze them, I tell you about them, but I don't let them get to me anymore. And I really advise you not to let them get to you either. It's not worth getting down about these things. We watch, we observe, we analyze in real time, and then we'll see. And every day that passes is another day gained. That's it, my friends. Thank you for listening up to this point. My book, Astrology, is available on Amazon in audio format today. Yes, it's also available in audio format on Audible, and it's available in paperback and on Kindle as well. That's it, my friends. Thank you for watching this video up to this point. And honestly, sincerely, you go to bed, turn off the light, and sleep. Tomorrow is another day, and we'll see together what happens. See you very soon.